Hi there. This is a video I've been wanting to make for almost a week now, and it regards Ford India's manufacturing demise. Today is the 14th of September and it has been a week since Ford India announced that they would be stopping all manufacturing for the Indian market at both their manufacturing plants in Chennai and at Sanand in Gujarat. First and foremost, I would like to commiserate with all the people who will lose jobs as a result. It isn't just the 4,000 odd people who will lose jobs at the manufacturing sites, but also as a result of the drawdown, the sales representatives at dealerships, the dealer principals themselves, even the receptionists, and the auto industry does not work as an insular being. So it's also the guys who transport the cars, the paanwallas outside the factory. All those people are affected, and even though we might say only 4,000 odd jobs are directly affected, indirect impacts could be as much as 12,000-15,000 people. Some of them will be able to find jobs. I believe the auto market in India is growing, thanks to manufacturers like Hyundai and Kia, and while this year it's going to be affected immensely by a shortage of semiconductors, I believe we should be having a lot of positive growth in 2022 and 2023. So a lot of the guys who lose jobs may be able to get them, but not everybody. The question is why Ford failed in India. And that's not an easy one to answer. Now, Ford has been around in India for almost a quarter of a century. It's actually been a quarter of a century since they really opened up shop in 95 and they decided to come to India. They had a joint venture with Mahindra then with the Chennai plant, where they started assembling the Ford Escort. And they had come to India alongside their American rival General Motors and a Korean company, Daewoo Motors. I remember driving the Ford Escort in around 97. I think I just joined college, and the Ford Escort 16 valve had come out. I think it was one of the first 16 valve cars. This is before I started my career as an automotive journalist, and around the same time I would feel that Hyundai Motors had also started up shop in India, and the Escort was if I recall correctly, it was up against the Honda City as well at that time. The first Honda City, I think, had come out around that time. The Ford Escort was significantly more pricey than the competition, and it really did not make much inroads into the market because it was a slightly dated car when it came into the market at all. It was between the Opel Astra and the Honda City. Ford's second car in India was a much more made for India vehicle, the Icon. Many of you would remember. You still see a few on the roads today. And the Icon, if you remember back in the day, came with a 1.6 engine, and that was a superb car to drive. The 1.6 Ford Icon could keep up with vehicles like the Honda City 1.5, which was the car to have. The reason the Honda City did better was, I guess, it was ever so slightly cheaper, and more importantly, it was far more reliable. My boss, around 2003, had an Icon 1.6. It was in the dark green color. It looked really nice, and he loved driving it. But he also had a Honda City VTEC, and I remember this story quite well. He also always come to office in the Honda City. He used to say that I prefer driving the Ford, but if I had to sit in the back seat, I'd rather have the Honda City. And when he sold both cars, he sold them around the same time. People were lined up to buy his City VTEC, and he moved from a City, if I remember, to a Civic, and people lined up to buy the City VTEC. The Ford, which had very low mileage, didn't get much money at all. And reliability, fuel economy, created problems. I mean, one reason Ford launched the 1.3 Icon was because of the fuel economy issues of the 1.6, and the 1.3 was gloriously underpowered. I mean, I don't think you've ever driven the 1.3 Icon. It was a lovely car again, but it was massively underpowered. The only positive that happened with the Icon is it brought Ford's 1.5 Z-Tech diesel, if I remember. I think it's a Z-Tech. I mean, there's so many brands you have to keep tab of. Ford, next couple of moves were fairly smart. One of them was, of course, the Endeavour. It was also the Fiesta, the first generation Fiesta, and the Figo. The Ford Figo was brought in to address Ford's biggest weak spot in India, which is quite simply the fact that Ford did not have a small car, and India was in the 2000s a small car, small hatchback market. The Figo came in again. It couldn't really compete against the likes of the Swift and the Hyundai i10, which dominated the market and continue to dominate the market. In fact, today I just got a press release from Maruti saying that they've sold 2.5 million Swifts since the car was launched in 2005. It's really sad. I mean, the Figo could just not, the first generation Figo looked dated. Again, great car to drive. Just like the one-off Fusion that Ford had, again, which I think early 2000s, one of the first cars I test drove. It was a precursor to this SUV rush we see today, both sub 4 meter and 4.5 meter C segment. The Fusion was fabulous to drive, despite the body shape being SUV-like. A car handled as if it was on rails. And Ford couldn't take advantage of that. I think one reason was that the excise laws were changed in 2006 to make this sub 4 meter category, which is now creating problems in India. And the Fusion, if I remember correctly, was 4 meters and 4050 mm. It was just over, it was 5 centimeters too long. And no matter how you look at it, cutting 5 centimeters from the length of a car does create structural problems, because a car is designed in such a way. You can't just say, we can cut 5 centimeters from a car. You have to change manufacturing processes, all of that. It's not that easy, which is why, for example, Volkswagen India has not brought in the current generation Polo to India, because it is just ever so slightly too long. I think in this case it's about 4 centimeters too long, but cutting it is just not possible without compromising safety and security and stability. Then there was the Fiesta, which was, well, the first Fiesta was a brilliant car. It had the, if I recall, it had the first affordable dual clutch gearbox in the Indian market, and it was a brilliant car to drive. Around 2012, I took that car up to the mountains in full load. That gearbox was fabulous. It gave me decent economy as well. It was a very well laid out car. It had the interiors that then, of course, became common on a lot of other Fords, such as the pre-facelift top versions of the Ecosport with the number pad, and it looked really nice. But again, the only car that really sold for Ford, two cars that have sold for Ford in the last decade have been the Endeavour and the Ecosport. The Endeavour, of course, brilliant car. It was my father's last car in his life. Very capable off-road car. I mean, we've done some off-roading in it, events organized by Ford India, both in the mud around Delhi and in the Rajasthan Thar Desert, where they launched the facelifts of the car. Unfortunately, the Endeavour is far more, it's the most capable off-roader in its class. but it never had the sales success of the Toyota Fortuner, primarily because the Fortuner is a very reliable car, extremely reliable. Those who loved off-roading might have bought the Endeavour, but you know, as you are well aware, most people who buy SUVs don't really go off-road. Anyhow, then there's the Ecosport. My wife owns an Ecosport. Okay, she owns the post-facelift Trend Plus automatic with the 6-speed torque converter automatic. The Ecosport was the first affordable SUV body shape car to come with a dual clutch gearbox. It came with a lot of features when it was launched, including the EcoBoost engine, which, you know, Ford was really, you know, boosting up the EcoBoost engine. You got this small little turbocharged engine that gave you 120 PS of power, 1 liter turbocharged engine, and coupled with a dual clutch gearbox. You ticked all the boxes. Everybody was happy. The problem is Ford really couldn't get his version straight, and the initial demand for the Ecosport was ruined at a level by poor dealership management and an inability of Ford to control the version. There was a Titanium Plus, and what we found out, a Titanium Plus optional. And I know people who bought the Ecosport who were writing me messages on social media back then saying, what the hell's going on? Which one should I buy? They're saying this one comes with a sunroof, but if I want a sunroof, I've got to pay 50 grand more. There was a lot of confusion back then. It is still a brilliant car. You know, when my wife bought the car, and believe me, my wife was, you know, because of what I do, she did not want me to interfere in her car buying process, and I did not do that. I did, however, help her get the preferred color that she wanted. Our buying experience of that Ecosport was, again, we went to a great dealership in Delhi, Saptajang Ford, which was in Pikajikama Place. Great experience there, but because the color of the car that my wife wanted had to be delivered to Gurgaon, we had a fairly awful experience in the Gurugram dealership, including the fact that, you know, you need that little sticker on the car nowadays, and all of, you know, the registration sticker. That took forever to come, you know. It's constant reminders for the registration card. Yes, you know, getting a car registered in Delhi when you buy it from Gurgaon is a bit of a pain, but most dealerships have the setup. I mean, cars get bought in different parts of the NCR all the time. It took, I think, almost 3 months for us to get our registration certificate, and in that was a microcosm of one reason that Ford India failed. We just could not manage the sales and marketing process. I mean, Ford organized a fabulous drive around the four corners of India when they launched the Mustang in India. I was very fortunate to drive the Mustang between Visakhapatnam and Bhubaneswar. Brilliant drive. Stopped at Gopalpur on sea. Spectacular views. What a lovely place to have a lovely car. And, you know, blasting that 5-liter V8 down the highway. Great time. I'm really sad to see Ford go. Make no mistakes. I wish they could have stuck around longer, but they were losing money hand over fist. And eventually, in a business, you have to make a call to cut your losses and get out. But my only example I'll give here is Ford took a call to cut their losses and get out of Jaguar Land Rover and handed over a brilliant asset to Tata Motors. I'm sure Tata Motors is not complaining because they got a full product lineup. I do not agree with Ford Motor Company's decision to shut their Indian manufacturing operations. I think it's a stupid decision. Not just because there are thousands of people affected by it, but because they made good cars, and I think had they hung around for a little bit longer, they could have really cracked the market with their upcoming C SUV, the one that they had tied up in Mahindra for. And unfortunately, sagai ho gayi us shadi mein, but shadi nahi ho pai. I hope things can improve and maybe look forward as well. But for now, it is the end of the Ford story in India, and that is very sad.